What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go over Grimrail Depot and what it's like to tank this key at 20 and above. We're going to start out with a standard pull here and make sure that we go ahead and get the Dreadlord in as part of the first pack. If it's a fortified week, make sure you have something popped as far as mitigation. You will get chunked early. You're going to want to make sure that you interrupt those technicians and bring them back into the group. And you're also going to want to make sure you're up against a wall so that you don't send the charges all over the place. Once this pack goes down, you're going to want to go ahead and run into the next pull, where you can potentially get the patrol. In addition, it just kind of depends on where it is. For this video, the affixes are bolstering and quaking. So we're doing our best here to make sure that we're being responsible with bolstering so that none of these mobs get too big. We opt to pull back in this corner here to avoid the patrol, just simply because the fact that it's bolstering. Normally we'd want to grab this Overseer as part of it. It's just that he was too deep in his patrol, so we weren't able to get it done. The other reason for tanking them here is so that you can make sure all of the charges run directly into a wall and maintain higher DPS uptime. You're going to go ahead and skip the two mobs over to the right, then go into your final pull, where you can get the two patrols in addition to the two stationary mobs, one of which is a Nathrezine. Again, you're going to want to tank up against the wall, make sure that all of the mobs stay within range of your melee, and then you're going to want to make sure that you interrupt or CC the technician so that he doesn't set off an Iron Star. Once this pull is all the way done, you can move into your Zolgamox pull. We typically will pull Zolgamox before the final boss. Not everyone is aware of this, but you're able to do it through the wall. If you are a shorter character model like I am, you'll need to jump to be able to do this, but any instacast will work. Given the fact that I'm a paladin, I go with Avenger Shield, and it's able to get both mobs at once. This is a tight space, so if you're uncomfortable tanking it here, or you don't trust your DPS, you can go ahead and bring it back where you just killed the last pack. It'll make you lose a little bit of time, but nothing that'll break your time bank. So with Zolgamox, you're always going to want to make sure you take care of the Hypnosis Bat, make sure no one gets MC'd. And now we've got our buff for the boss. As a tank, you're going to want to do your best to make sure that your DPS is able to target Borka and then cleave on to the other mob. This can be insanely irritating, especially if you're not a mobile class. And then Borka will do a frontal charge and knock off the other boss. This is where you're going to want to pop Lust and make sure that you're bursting the two of them together. Again, I'm doing my best to make sure I'm consistently working my way over to stack the bosses whenever possible. You're going to want to have a lot of mitigation going. Borka certainly likes to take out his aggression on the tank. So you can see at this point that our Lust has now worn off. We're now at the point where we're trying to stabilize and make sure that the boss health is starting to become a little bit closer to even. Our goal here is to not DPS the small mob too fast, because we would force it to skip this last phase where he goes up top. And we want Borka to get one last stun off on him so that we can maximize our uptime without him skipping around on us. We're going to go ahead and cleanly kill the bosses here. The last thing you want is to have Borka get too big and start wailing on the tank, especially on a tyrannical week. So that's why you want to make sure that they are killed as close to even as possible. Now this little gauntlet here is actually a little bit trickier than it appears, especially on higher keys. You don't want to get hit by any of these orange swirls or these explosions, but these two mobs in particular really truck the tank on Fortified Week. As a tank, you're going to want to be very vocal with your healer here, just to make sure that you're in a position where you feel comfortable. As you can see, we're slow pulling this mob, and we're just killing the individual one, just simply because round effects are just not very friendly overall. I rely on Consecrate as a tank, and if Consecrate isn't actually ticking on me, then I'm actually taking more damage than I need to, and it's not providing me my DR. And given the fact that it is fortified in a 23, we just decide to play it safe. We're more than fine on time. A lot of people will try to do these two mobs together, but given the fact that our healer is a shaman, the only external that he provides is a Spirit Link totem, and that's not something that is easily dropped here until you get to the top platform. Now, quaking certainly causes some problems on the train. There's not a whole lot of room to work with, so you're going to want to do your best as a tank to make sure that you're not effectively killing your melee DPS whenever possible. There's a number of things that you can do with these front channels. Although it's not a spell cast, it can't be interrupted. You can certainly do things like stun, Paladin can blinding light, so you're just going to want to make sure you're interrupting them as frequently as possible. We have our Shaman drop Cap Totem, we have our Warlock drop his Shadow Fury, and if you have a Fire Mage, which we do not, of course there's options there as well. This is a very similar pull to the last one. Got a little bit more room to work with. I'm trying to use all of it as the floor becomes fire. But communicating with your team is very important here, and then avoiding those sleep puddles is absolutely critical. If you get caught in a sleep puddle, it's probably going to kill you as a tank on this pull, as well as most of the pulls on the train. So as we go into our next pull, one of the things that we do is we like to pull this first pack back. We found that after a lot of trial and error, it's really difficult to move up into the next cabin. You almost always end up getting both packs. If you do that, someone will inevitably butt pull. And then as you can see, I'm going to use all the space that I had on the last pull for the sake of getting through this pull. Anytime there's a frontal, I'm doing my best to interrupt it. If they're all going off at once, I'll use things like Blinding Light or any kind of AoE disorient that your class might have. If you're a bear, Demoralizing Roar is absolutely perfect here. I then go ahead and stick my butt in this corner and bring back the next pack. A couple of reasons for doing this and why the whole team doesn't run through to this cab on the previous pull is because you can actually get the big mob solo if you pull it this way. You don't activate him. He actually runs from the back of the cab up into this middle pack, and we purposely wanted to avoid him. So while we pulled this pack here, he ended up spawning and going into the location. So now we're pulling him back, and we're just going to take the Hulk by himself. We try to soothe this every 10 stacks or so, just to make sure he's not absolutely trucking the tank. You can pretty much do it on cooldown though if you'd like. Just kind of depends on comp. The last thing that we wanted to do is get this guy bolstered, so that's why we decided to do him as a solo pull. Now this last pull I think is probably one of the harder ones. Most people just go into it thinking it's going to be just like every other pull. The one thing that this pack has, or does not have, that the others do have, is a Dreadlord. So given the fact that there is no Dreadlord in this pack, it makes it quite a bit harder. So you can see I actually go down here, but thankfully we had enough damage going, and we had Binding Shot, and we had a lot of things to kind of stop them from really decimating the rest of the team that we were able to kind of recover here. So not the most perfect pull in the world, but we do recover, and now we're done with all the trash at this end of the train. And we're going to go ahead and go into this next boss. The only thing you need to worry about as a tank on this first phase here is to just not stand in his circle when he's channeling his grenades. As long as you do that, you should be okay. That's something that the entire team needs to be aware of. I always try to pull him as far back as possible and try to stick my butt in a corner, just because we're all within a confined space. This makes it easier on the rest of your team if the tank is the one that's taking the hit as far as the clipping with the video. I go ahead and I use a movement effect to get up front here. These first 2 mobs always spawn in the same place. Do my best to stun at least one of them. You could potentially do something like a roar here or a blinding light to disorient. Just makes for easy mob control, and it won't melt your DPS just when they go up to run up to them. Now you'll notice my positioning throughout this fight. I do my best to make sure that all the mobs are dying right by a cannon. That's to make sure that we make quick work of the boss and try to move him out of this phase as soon as possible. There's a lot of things you can do here to help you group up. You just saw that I went ahead and LOS'd just to keep everything clumped and grouped together and still near that cannon. And our DPS is doing a really good job of just making sure that anytime something drops and they're able to hop in the cannon, they do it as soon as possible. That ends up phasing the boss pretty quickly. We've now got the boss down. Then the only thing I'm going to do differently here is I'm going to get out of the wind so that I'm no longer fighting it. And I'm going to go ahead and stand just inside while keeping him in front of a cannon. We had enough where a second person could do a cannon, so now we've got 2 cannons bringing him down. And it makes for a very easy fight. It's best not to be cute here with the fire, just wait for it to go by. And then given this is a fortified week, and given the fact that we didn't want to bolster the heck out of these last couple mobs here, we're going to take this Farseer pretty much as a solo pull, at least initially, until we have control over it. We bring in the Dreadlord because it doesn't scale with bolstering, it doesn't scale with quaking, or anything else that we need to worry about. And then we kind of had a weird little quirky thing happen here. No one actually pulled that, it just kept coming as it was spawning. So we're dealing with this in stride. This is certainly not the way that you want to do it, but we're certainly coordinating to the best of our ability, making sure we're stepping out of the swirls, making sure that we're not stepping on each other with quaking. We have our Warlock go down, which obviously is not ideal, given the fact that we need the AoE right now. And so we're just going to kind of fight our way through this group. Again, not clean, but also not anything that we could control. No one even pulled that mob, they just kept coming. So that's not typical, and generally that first pull that I did is completely safe. We do end up wiping there, so we are at the point where we are repulling right now. Much safer mob count here, and we no longer have that glitch where they keep coming from the other side, mainly because those are the mobs we were able to get down. We're all focusing on the Farseer here, and we're avoiding the Thunder Zone whenever possible. You can see we still run into a couple of things. Quaking in tight areas is never fun, but on top of that we had a Thunder Zone spawn right outside of our Thunder Zone. We're going to do our best to interrupt the Elemental Shield whenever that pops. If it does go ahead and go off, you can always purge it off. This Overseer here is very important to make sure that you tank away from the rest of your group. It has a 180 frontal cone that will certainly cleave your melee and absolutely kill them on this key level, especially on fortified weeks. We're going to go into the last pull and just kind of finish everything off all at once. You're going to want to coordinate interrupts, and again, you're going to want to do your best to make sure that you're aiming all the frontals away from your group, but you also have to do that while making sure you're avoiding the swirlies on the ground. These bolstered, fortified swirls will absolutely one-shot, as you just saw the mage get it clipped. Again, we make sure that we interrupt the Storm Shield. If you don't get the interrupt, please be quick to purge that off. Once we finish these guys off, we're going to go ahead and get our mage up, and then we'll go on into the boss. Now this last boss has proven to be pretty challenging, especially on tyrannical weeks, but it always follows the same pattern. We're going to go ahead and Lust on Pull here. Then you're going to see an Ice Trap go out. There's the ice trap, then the dragon's going to come, and then we move, and then he's going to do a frontal effect, which is a straightforward spear. You're always going to want to make sure you know which way the boss is facing. Make sure that you are not in front of it when the spear goes out. On Tyrannical, it will one-shot you. So it's pretty much wash, rinse, repeat. You're going to get a ice trap. You're going to move away from the ice trap. You're going to get the dragon, and then you're going to get the boss frontal. As long as you are clean with that pattern, you'll be able to master this dungeon no problem. Keep in mind there's limited real estate here, so you're going to have to think ahead of where you're going to be going as a tank before each one of those dragon flybys. Hopefully this guide was helpful and will help you guys get into running keys at the level 20 or higher. Love to know your feedback. Please let me know in the comments below.